Welcome to the Beats and Balance podcast, a space for conversations at the intersection of creativity, healing, and community. Each week, we sit down with artists, healers, and everyday people to explore stories of transformation, resilience, and the ways we use creativity to survive and thrive.
All right, so today's guest is Pompy, a land steward, cultural worker, popular educator, and visionary organizer whose life and work exemplify what it means to build from the ground up, literally and metaphorically. Pompy is a founding member of the Neighborhood Grow Plan, a deeply rooted initiative that encourages neighbors to grow food where they live while reclaiming land, housing, and economic justice through creative cultural strategy. The work spans decades of community organizing, from decolonizing museums to cultivating food forests, from designing mutual aid bazaars to co-founding artists, cooperatives, and care economies. They move between disciplines with rigor and fluidity, bringing poetry, dance, performance, visual art, and economic justice to every space they touch. In this episode, we talk about creative survival, libertary land work, and what it means to build justice through relationship, reciprocity, and ritual. This conversation is a portal into the future that is possible and already underway. So let's get into it. Pompy, thank you so much for being here with us today. Let's start off with your personal journey. If you want to tell us a little bit about your background and how that shaped your work.
I was born here, but my very first memories are growing up in India, in a city called Kolkata, which is a really big metropolitan area of Bengal, formerly the capital of the British Raj and many of the Mughal dynasties before that. So it's a place of multiple confluences of many, many cultures, many, many belief systems. And somehow we hold it all, or we try to. I grew up, I think, always wanting to express myself, very loquacious child. I was in the care of my maternal grandmother, who I call Didu or Dida. Mm-hmm. And she was probably the most creative person around me. And she would tell me stories that she would just make up. Obviously, now I know it's through generations of storytelling. And she was able to be very spontaneous about changing things and making it interesting for whoever was listening. And she encouraged my writing. She encouraged the drawings that I would do. She would encourage me singing, although I was less of a singer, more of a loud kid. And that kind of stimulation was really, really impactful and meaningful that I'm realizing many decades later, because when I first moved to the States, I didn't realize I wasn't going to see her for a very long time. So, and it was in the 80s that we moved back to the States. And I remember it being a moment of like a very distinct compression. Everything that I knew just really collapsed on everything. And I was thrown into this culture where not much was making sense. And through it all, I remember the very first moments, me being myself was not easy. The way that I was in India was very much not easy for me to be that way here. Every attempt at me being expressive was challenged. And we moved to Dallas, near Dallas, Texas area. So
huge jump.
It's a very, very difficult jump. And yeah, what I remember was I would keep up, and my father also appreciated culture very much, and he would keep up my studies in the Bengali language at home, and he always was a soft landing space for me to just be myself. So I was able to mostly be myself at home, and every single time outside I had to be on my best behavior. Mm-hmm. And by best behavior means that not even the things that I thought were okay in the public in this other land was acceptable behavior here, because they would just draw attention to me that would encourage punitive behavior. So it was a way to it basically had the effect of silencing me. And so I would speak up in class, kind of, but usually I would be very quiet outside of class situations. I was vocal in class because I knew I had to be in order to do well. But even in class, I remember, I don't know why I'm getting broiled into the childhood, but I think this is really informative about reclaiming your voice, right? So I remember in ninth grade, we had classes where the teacher would kind of teach both math and English and everything. You know, I remember having really fine handwriting. I would like try to write really small. This was kind of the way I would manifest play. I would write all my little stories really tiny. But then in math class, I was super bored to death, like the entire time, because we were doing long division when I was 5 years old in India, and we were waiting. So by ninth grade, they started to do long division. And so the teacher kind of was like trying to make it exciting. And she said, I bet no one has seen this before, and all of that kind of things. To me, I read it as a challenge because of course I knew the answer. So during recess, I went and I finished the problem that she had left up there. And when she came back, she was really upset because she was like, who marked up my thing? You know, she didn't look at the fact that I had done it properly. She was upset that someone had dared to like do anything to it. And then I didn't say nothing because I was scared. But then I couldn't help myself because she erased it. And then when she was carrying you have to carry the figures, she made a mistake. So I pointed it out and she got really upset. After that, I noticed that all of my essays were graded down because she couldn't grade down on my math, but she could grade down on my essays. So this was like very early learning about being a person of color, and particularly like someone who's engaged in class, and the kind of disbelief and just anger that you know anything at all.
Microaggressions.
Yeah, all the time. And it didn't stop, you know, like it has followed me to this day. I'm trying to finish a master's in public policy. So the way it affected my art, I remember when I was in my late 20s, I was working full time at like a big institution, and they had like these adult education that they would give you a little bit of a break for. You know, they would pay for the classes if you take it as an adult for their continuing education program. And I signed up for what was called like Youth Arts for Social Change. And they would bring in local artists who are really skilled at very particular kinds of expressive arts. So the very first one was movement and performance art. And I remember even going into the class the very first day, I knew the circumstances. They were describing what was going to happen in class. And then they had us name ourselves, like say our names and like why we were there. And I remember that it was the first time that I not only said my name, but I said it connected to being an artist. And I like started crying. Yeah.
That's pivotal.
Yeah. And I
So
saw that
art.
New. Yeah, it was new. And I had mentors before then who were very impactful for me understanding that I had been kind of raised in like a bubble. I grew up middle class. My parents were like an artist, like a teacher and an engineer, but it's a bubble that you can be brought up in. And so this particular mentor really shook me out of that and helped me to see that there's way more to the world, and it's very, very, very difficult to accept that that's how the world is. So it's like little heartbreaks, you know, or rather severe heartbreaks. But this class allowed me to know that you can take your art and your creativity and really apply it to social change. Like, you don't have to be making things for museums. You don't even need to have an art career, which to most people, when I say it, is just like shocking. It's like, because I protest so much, it's ensured that I don't really have an art career. So to me, it's kind of funny, but I still like most of the way I engage with the world is through expressive arts, programming and workshops and art making.
So it sounds like an art career to me.
Yeah. But career in the sense that, you know, it's like already as a person of color, we don't get that many funds. As a person of color doing the work that I'm doing, and also it being super niche because I'm working from the South Asian perspective, because I talk about what I know and the diasporic perspective, it's very niche. So it's very difficult to get funded sometimes. But, you know, you keep at it because you know that these are healing technologies that you have absorbed through your life. It works for you. So you try to share it with other people, you know. At least that's the way that I'm glad that the people who came in and modeled that for me did that for me. And yeah, I feel that that was the art portion of it, where after a while I reclaimed my voice. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't really associate as being a singer. I would write a lot of poems, but then in my late 20s, I started writing poems, but then somehow these melodies started coming to me, and these melodies felt familiar or natural. And then I would write these songs. And because I was already on this bent that we make art, sometimes it's abstract. Art has its place, but I've sincerely believe that with the defunding of arts education, we really need to go back to more less abstract art. You know, symbolic art is fine. You know, like, so I'm reclaiming a lot of the traditional folk art forms because there's still a little bit of a suspension of belief, but you're not throwing yourself out of your body and brain to try to like make sense of something, you know, like it's presenting, you know, theater, it's presenting the classical folk theater. You see characters, they're working something out. I feel like reclaiming that is very important to me because the spaces that I was in was more abstract, and I felt like it was really not, there's a place for everything, but it was not really going to serve the community in the way that not only were my strengths, but also it wasn't really moving to me. Like, you're taking these really complex, really violent systems and breaking it down. When you're being esoteric about it, it's, no one's going to get it. You know, you got to just, I don't know, that's the way I've been managing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I think it's also about cultural preservation. I don't know, I'm having such issues talking today. But yeah, especially with today's climate of erasure, right? Like they are trying to kind of whitewash everything and erase everything for political reasons. So I think, yeah, like a movement to revive indigenous and traditional and folk art forms is crucial on many levels, right? Because as you see, like that's one of the ways in which they try to erase humanity. So yeah, I think it's super important work. Can you tell us what called you to found the Neighborhood Grow Plan and how it's evolved since 2020?
Yes, thanks for redirecting me out of that whole big thing of art. So art was a big thing. Art was a big portion of me coming into myself and feeling comfortable being myself. There's so many things you can explore. And the segue, the linchpin of what I'm trying to explore through my art is caste and my relationship to that and the lineages that I'm a part of and their relationship to that. But that really, like when you're looking at social stratification, that is one of the longest running social colonial stratifications in the world that is still active, then it's very easy to see how colonialism that's more current, like European colonialism, works. Then it's really easy to identify other kinds of colonialism, which we start to identify as empire and the moving away from the relationship with the earth. So then my intuition is, well, we need to like try to reclaim our connection to the earth. Now that was intellectual for a while. And then in 2014, I got really chronically ill with vitamin D deficiency. And so I pivoted the type of work I was doing and started landscaping. And landscaping, of course, is interesting because I started doing organic landscaping work, which then was like, well, why can't we grow food as landscape? And took a permaculture class. And that put me on a path of having some pins that helped to solidify this move towards getting closer to the earth. So then Neighborhood Grow Plan came around 2020 when I was able to observe, even before any of the actions of our current nation state, that people are going to be isolated, that a portion of the population will be forced to work, and that the idea of this illness that passes from one place to another can really seize and make people fearful. And what that does with the control of public space and being able to take up space in public closes down. It could potentially, the way the state can operate can close down access to public space, which in a way, you know, whether it was intentional or not, that's the direction it's going to go, because we live in a really surveilled, violent state, and they don't really want us to be that free. So
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that now in real time.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think all of the things that you're saying are super crucial.
for
Go
me,
ahead.
I was like, well, people are going to be like, sorry, I was like on a point. Apologies, I interrupted.
No, go ahead.
I was knowing that there's going to be some kind of isolation, and we need to break out. We need to practice breaking out of that isolation. And so I was reading the science, seeing what community organizations were doing, particularly the performing arts organizations. I think the performing arts organizations were really critical to experimenting at the edges. It's dangerous, and at the same time, you kind of have to, so they were the first to experiment with, well, all these artists are going to lose income, and this is kind of one of the primary ways they're taking care of themselves. So how can we open up public spaces and people can watch and patron, and the arts are needed, So I was part of like one of the first experiments in the city of Cambridge to perform before the vaccine. It was so scary.
Oh, very cool.
So we were masked. We had to be like observe all of the 10 feet away from the other performers. Like the line was funny, or maybe it was just after the vaccines. I can't remember. It was just after the vaccines, because I don't think I would have done it if it was without the vaccine. Mm-hmm. The way that they had staggered the stage outside was really interesting, because nobody was sitting next to each other, but they were on the same line for the rows, but they were 10 feet apart. And then there was a skipping between the rows. And it was a very interesting experience. So using that as an inspiration, I continued that in my work. So one of the first things we were doing with Neighborhood Grow Plan was we would grow seedlings in the greenhouse, and then we would give it out porch to porch. So we would go porch to porch or set up a space at the town center, have masks and all of the things, and people can grab seedlings and chat with us. So, and people were really delighted, So it was like checking in on the neighbors by checking in on the plants.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's another huge issue that COVID had, was the lack of community. So I feel like that's a really great aspect where you could come and also have a chat and get some human interaction. So let's talk about your mutual aid, food justice, and land work. How do you understand the connection between food, land, housing, and cultural sovereignty? And can you share a story that illustrates what reciprocal community-rooted reinvestment looks like in practice? You've been talking about that with your neighborhood grow plan. So how has that, I guess, bloomed since you started in 2020, and what's it looking like now?
Thanks, Tinora. So for me, a lot of what I do is rooted in these tiny little, I learn something and then I package it into a tiny expressive arts workshop. And then I try to share that somehow. So in this case, with the growing, I started growing food, and you can't tell people what that relationship is like. You can describe it with all of the words, but until someone does it, they're not going to get it. There's like this really inherent magic that starts to happen when you're watching plants. You don't realize it, but you're starting to...
I've worked on a farm, so I definitely understand.
Yeah. So for people who are disconnected from it, because I was learning it, I didn't realize it. And then I was like, well, I was watching all these plants. That's a lot of effort. It's hot and sweaty. You got to go out, lug all of this water, make sure all the plants are wet, but before the sun comes out so they don't burn the leaves, all those things. But over time, you're starting to have a relationship literally with the soil and the place that this plant is growing in. Whether you have formal ownership or not of this place, you have a relationship that no one can deny. You know what I mean? No law, no nothing. And that's
100%.
That connection with land sovereignty, food sovereignty, the idea that you can grow food. And so many of us are reliant on these systems for our food. And it was deliberately designed, like the whole lawn system. So people own houses and property, but the city will come and fine if it looks ugly or if you're growing food. And that starts in the plantation systems. Even in Europe, they would punish. It was a way of showing wealth that you have all this land and you don't have to grow food because you are, extracting labor from serfs who are then going to be punitive.
Mm-hmm.
They, first of all, are not allowed to have land. So they're working land that you give them. So it's these ancient rights and connections that we have that I'm trying to do. When people grow food, they understand all the labor that goes into it. And we also know that we're in historically marginalized communities who have a very, very difficult, and that's like a very kind word for it, relationship with food and growing food. So how do we do this in an empowered way from people whose labor had been extracted and they couldn't even eat the food that they were growing?
Yeah, no, it's huge.
And there's a lot of stigma about going into food work because of that, like especially growing work, because it's like, oh, that's just, they're going to just, put us back into these systems. And the way that the laws are working, you kind of wonder. So it's a tenuous place, but I feel that our inherent connection with liberation is rooted in it as well. So yes, that has been the past and the current present for many people. And there's a lot of us. So it's how do we build? And therefore, the concept of community self-defense comes in. My training in capoeira had really helped me to see that. A lot of the capoeiristas in Brazil, they are farmers. So it's deeply connected. Being able to protect your community and the lands that you're working and the food that you've been cultivating somehow.
Yeah, for sure. And then you can even go back to the quilombos and that model, which is, I think, kind of where we're headed in order to escape state violence, needing to kind of create your own homesteads and your own communities. And so, the history of capoeira is deeply, deeply entwined into all of that. So, it seems like you're on a path for sure.
We are all on paths. I'm trying to find the folks who want to explore with me and try to make it a doable thing. So we do very small things. So then people are like, oh, we can do that. And then, you know how, water melts from ice? For a while, it's ice. And then all of a sudden it becomes water. It's the same thing. It's like you build little things, you build connection, keep it consistent, keep showing up and trying to do that connectedly. And that's where the concept of reciprocity comes in for me in organizing. It's been a challenge because I was what I would call toxically inclusive because I was bullied so hard when I came here. I was definitely the bee's knees in India, so I didn't accept it when it was happening here. But I would then, just gather all the folks who are being bullied or outcasts, and we would just create a group and we would be the most fun group, so that never, stopped me. But at the same time, when you're toxically inclusive, what you do is you're not vetting the new people who are coming in. You're assuming they're coming from the same background. They may not understand the effort you're putting into bringing people together. You underestimate all the work and labor and care that you're putting in building trusting relationships with the people you've been with for a while. Then they can't trust the system because you're bringing in people who are breaking it.
Yeah.
Reciprocity, the way it's working, the way I'm hoping that I'm learning better and doing better is we have now circles. So people can engage with all of the general work for NGP. We try to stipend anyone who absolutely needs it. And most people do. If they are coming for the stipends and leaving and that's all they're going to do, and that's for that moment, that's what they do. People are living very different lives, I'm not going to make someone feel bad about it. People do that. But it's the people.
I think you bring up a good point, though. Oh, God.
Oh, tell me, please.
No, I was just going to say, I think a lot of people talk about community building, but they don't talk about what it actually means to be in community. And it can't always just be everybody is welcome, right? Because you talk about the trust issues. So I was just saying that's a very valid point to bring up when talking about building community is building community means building community with people that are going to be reciprocal, who are going to put in the work and who are equally engaged and have the same kind of goals and values. You don't have to agree on everything, but you definitely have to have a kind of shared sense of morality, I would say.
And that's why we have the layers too, because people can say they have these values, but they don't know how to do it. Or they may be opportunist. So, they share these values and they're opportunists. So there's one or both or something. So these layers of giving people access to more and more responsibility helps us also gauge who's being serious about this and who is just like needing clout or whatever it is, and there's a place for everybody. But knowing the way that the core people are working and functioning, I'm not necessarily going to bring everybody in, and I mean, we as a collective. So we're having these discussions, and then it doesn't stay in the realm of discussion. We are actually in active praxis. So the people who keep coming back with or without a stipend, those are the ones that we then, because it's an investment also to teach and, train and all of these things.
For sure.
Part of this is valuing your own labor and what you're doing.
For sure. So let me switch up real quick and ask you, how do you navigate sustaining your practice while resisting burnout? Because it's one thing to be giving to the community, but also like you have to have a certain level of self-care to be able to maintain. So how do you balance those things?
Thank you for that question. Definitely. Trying to figure that out always.
Yeah.
So my primary thing is we're rooted in disability justice. And when you're working at the pace of trust, nothing can be rushed. There's technically no deadline. Yes, of course there's deadline, but there's really no deadline. The other thing that helps us keep in track is we're working with seasons. So it gives us a little bit of an accountability. So we check in with folks who've been involved to see what we're going to be doing for the next season. And we ask them honestly, do you really have time for this? And some people are like, actually, I've been really struggling. So I don't think, but I can do this. So we break down what the season plan for it to be somewhat successful needs to have and all the roles. And people commit to certain things. And because we've had relationship with them, we have a working trust. Okay. And our main thing is if something changes, because life happens, let us know immediately, because we will always find other people. And it doesn't mean we're excluding you. It's just, once certain things are on the move, if we can find someone to pick up your work, then, at least the project happens. But we're always checking in with people, whether they have to step back or not. So everyone is involved in the decision making, and we're working with people's capacity and needs. And that helps me not burn out.
How do you do that? Okay. I was going to say, how do you do that on a personal level for you, though?
Well, part of this is the practice of very active practices of waiting for people. So Neighborhood Grow Plan, we kind of it was in the beginning of the pandemic. We had a lot of time on our hands. And so we were able to move fairly quickly. People were excited about it. There were some funds, and I had the energy and time. Now with like the workforce on our members and all of this stuff changing a little bit, it's kind of back to what it was like before with respect to labor extraction, like having to pay for, with inflation, it's become really bad. What I was doing was keeping this alive, doing small things over the season. And I actually also endured a lot of like housing violence during this time. So I was displaced twice. So there was really nothing I could do except these small projects. So there are key projects in Neighborhood Grow Plan, like the apothecary, where we basically collect herbs and we make medicine and then we pass it around. And that fortunately, we've been able to maintain. If I can't physically do it, there are other people who can do it. And it's small gestures sometimes. Maybe we're not reaching as many people, but we're still keeping up the practice. And that's what I mean by the keeping everything warm, doing the practice anyways, no matter how small or how big, so that when you have the moment to become big, you've been in practice. And then it's not such a big deal. But the other programs, It would basically be more serendipitous. Someone had energy. Pampi, what are we doing with the grow lab? We just have to like activate it with a little bit of like fish emulsion. So we're doing these like drought resistant soil layering. So we don't have to water the bins at all. And it's an amazing process that one of our members who has, he's Nigerian American, has been working on this for many, many years, had reached out to Neighborhood Grow Plan wanting to do this with us. So we are doing community science. So each neighbor has a bin. Some of them are growing their own food on normal containers or in the ground, and they have this bin, and they're noticing very clearly that the entire season they watered it once. And this is July, August, when it's boiling outside.
Mm.
And the vegetables are just vibrant and coming out. So what we learned,
Amazing.
He'd reached out and he's like, Bumpy, all we need to do is just add a little bit of this and it will reactivate the lower layers. And therefore we'll have a whole other season of this. It's an experiment for sure, but it worked. So now we're on our third season of these bins.
Very cool.
Those kinds of things.
So working smarter, not harder is also a big thing.
Working smarter and not harder, not rushing. I am definitely holding a lot of the administration, and that's part of the waiting. So the young person who had started Neighborhood Grow Plan just graduated in environmental engineering and then called me up and said that they want to rejoin. And they said that what you're doing is what the world needs, Pompy. So I was waiting for her in a way because I know she has the kind of personality it would take for me to not have to be doing all of it by myself. And I also know that we need a third person because our personalities are extreme ends. So we need a third person to balance it out. So I said, we're onboarding, but, please know it's going to be a little frustrating until we bring in a third person. So we'll again, go with what we're comfortable with. We can't amp up the youth programming right now because we need that third person. So that kind of thing.
Cool. It's a great thing to recognize. Sometimes you do need a buffer. And you don't always work with people that are exactly aligned with your personality, but that doesn't mean that you can't get the work done. So I think that's really dope. You guys are making that work out. So to close out, let me just ask you, what are you imagining for the next phase of your work and for the communities that you're in relationship with? And if you could leave listeners with a call to action or a reflection, what would it be?
The reality is that whether you're doing nonprofit or community organizing or whatever, all of it is wealth redistribution. All of it is tactical wealth redistribution. And we're still in the deficit in the way that we are moving. We're appealing to people who are sitting on hoarded, stolen wealth for their generosity. And we also know traditionally people with the most give the least. So I would really like to see those people who are involved in wealth redistribution work to really tackle that. And at this point, the way that the world is going, we're losing time. I don't know if we have time left to make this climate situation reversible anymore. But we need to work with where we're at, and we can't keep losing ground. And grassroots organizations who are doing this work really need support. And if we're spending 90% of our energy begging, nobody's serious. No one is really serious about sustainability, about livability, about futures, about anything really. And I think that it's easy to see that, especially in the political climate that we're in. But to me, it's when you are going after the beast, right? And you struck them, they are going to come down crashing and they're going to be very, very violent. And unfortunately, right now we're seeing our friends in many parts of the world that are directly connected to US imperialism suffering.
Yeah. No, it's very real.
And this is the tiniest things that we are still not able to do, which is boycott. Boycott. Support the people in your neighborhoods, building the futures in whatever capacity you have, and keep at it. Put it in their calendar somewhere and start weaving it into your calendar. Because part of this is we have to take our hands away from these destructive ways of being and literally put them into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You know what they say
100%.
about the devil's, what is it called? Something about like idle hands and the devil's playground.
Oh, idle hands make devil's work or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So the idea is our hands don't have to be idle. We are taught to believe that this is comfortable to be idle, but we can do small, small things. Every single one of us, if we're talking about an ecosystem, the ecosystem matters, systemic change matters, but so does every single organism in the ecosystem. Every single organism has a role to play if we are going to be shifting out of this nasty thing. And yeah, it's really heartbreaking right now because I'm one of the people who grew up in the, Generation X. I'm not saying that we're amazing or anything like that, but we knew a life without the kind of surveillance we see today. Kids are literally suckled into surveillance. They don't even know a life outside of surveillance. And I was cloistered and I was still more free.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is the conditioning, right? We need to break out of our conditioning. And every single generation that is alive right now has a role again. People who have stocks and bonds can divest from, I don't even like using war profiteers because this is not a war. This is absolute destruction, right? It's imperial profiteering. Divest, look at it. I know it's scary. Look right to the people, gather other people who are also in these giant, they've automated every damn thing, right? So you got to organize to say no, invest in grassroots. Nonprofits are great, but grassroots literally are working in the communities.
Yeah.
So we really need to rethink where we put our resources. And I love mutual aid. That's how people have been surviving. But we can't be at this place of surviving. We need to be thriving to actually build the worlds. So it has to go beyond mutual aid in proper investment. So yeah, boycott. 100%. If that's, I would say more, but I can't. Just barely getting people to even know what the hell is happening outside. I don't even know what to say.
It's all good. I think you wrapped it up pretty well. Boycotting, being intentional, I think is a huge part of that. Waking up to the fact that you have more power than you think you do when it comes to your spending power. Going out into your community and meeting real people and putting in the work. I think that's all that we need to make things a lot better. Log off the internet and go outside and meet somebody and have a conversation. And that's what this podcast is about, is just hearing people's stories and realizing that we're all kind of in this together and we have a lot more in common than we think we do. And the path out is not as treacherous as it thinks. It just really requires some intentionality and some compassion and some commitment to your community. So thank you so much for being here with us today. I wish you and the Neighborhood Grow Plan super, super success. Hopefully we can collab in some way in the future. You guys are in Massachusetts. We are here in Philadelphia. I know tons of farmers in upstate New York that are doing similar work. So I'd love to connect you with the folks at Sweet Freedom Farm. So yeah, we'll talk and hopefully something bigger can come from this. But
what a gift, Tinora.
Thank you so much.
Tinora, I have a question. I know you're trying to wrap this up, but I have a song. I have a song for you that I wrote.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So this piece was written in 2015 for the Black Lives Matter movement in honor of Prathia Hall, who's a preacher with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, who inspired Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream speech. As I lay me down to dream, I pray our souls not tear at seams. We shall not die, for we are awake. I pray for heart your pain to take. Our love will light the darkest hours. We'll fight till fear succumbs and cowers. Unbroken we'll sleep through the night. As birds we'll wake to morning's light. As I lay me down to dream, I pray, I pray, I pray.
That was really good. I haven't heard that song before, so I want to look it up because of the history. But that was super beautiful. I don't know the last time that somebody has sang live to me, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and thank you for the
Thank you.
conversation. It was great to get to know about you. We have a ton in common, so I'll definitely like link you with some people that I know that are doing some similar work up near you because I think it's super important what you guys are doing.
Tinora, also what you're doing with the Beats and Balance podcast, very important. I was so happy to see the social media about it. Thank you. And I wrote the song.
Oh, okay. I thought I see the thing is clicking off, so I thought in the beginning you said it was from the SNCC, Student Nonviolence Coordinating.
It was in honor of Pratia Hall because she preached something very similar to the dream, but he presented it at the March in Washington, so she usually doesn't get credit for the inspiration. So I wanted to make sure I pulled her memory in.
Okay, got you. Oh, okay. That's even more incredible. I thought you said that you got it from that, but you created the song yourself based on that as a tribute. That's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. That was really beautiful. And like I said, I wish you guys so much success.
Thank you.
And everything that you guys are doing up there.
And thank you for looking into connecting us too.
Yeah, for sure.